So we tackled her, and she took them. And then just so you know, Eddie Howard said, yes, I need a pen. And then he saw that they were blue Bics, and he said, yeah, never mind, I'm good. So just so you know, we got some picky people in the crowd. Thank you so much. This is such a busy time of year, and we know that. But as all of us know that are sitting in the room, the strategic plan is so important, and so we thank you for taking some time to be with us today. I'm just going to kick it off here quickly. So each one of you received 4 cards when you came in. If you didn't, we'll be up and down the aisles, and we'll get them for you if you happen to sneak in up in the back. Just so that you know, this one here with the 3 circles on it, this is going to be your takeaway, and you'll understand later. It's just kind of a thought piece that you'll be able to utilize and be able to share with others that may not have been able to attend. These 3 pieces here, you'll also see that as we go through the presentation, we're going to ask for you to kind of think outside the box, to kind of, as we've said before with each one of the questions, and we've done some of the word bubbles and such, we're going to ask you to comment on it again. There'll be a box up at the top and one down here when you leave. So anything on here, we'd love for you to turn in. Katrina, any questions? Do you want an extra set? You're good? Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to AJ.
Is this on? Is this working? No? Well, good afternoon. Thanks for coming. It's a good turnout. I predicted between 50 and 100. I think I was within that range. So I'm AJ Samel. I am a professor of economics first. That's to you. Second, I'm currently president of the faculty union for the next 2.5 months or so. And then I'm also a member of SPOT, the Strategic Planning Organization team. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, what we've done the past year, what we're currently doing, and then what we're planning on doing moving forward. But before I talk about that, there's a 5-minute video that we've compiled that talks about the strategic plan. So I'm just going to play that.
So right now on the strategic plan, we've been having some really good meetings. I think we have a really nice framework in place. And this is going to begin the drafting stages moving forward, probably through the summer and into the fall, taking all of that information and starting to have it take form within a plan.
I would say a couple of the broad cornerstones are: who are we as a university? Who do we want to be? And how do we get there? Some of the topics that we have identified, and they're broad. I think the key ones are student success, academic excellence, community engagement, and all 3 of those areas really infused by diversity and inclusion.
You know, having the guest speakers and thought leaders come to campus was a wonderful thing. It's not that they gave us specific ideas of what to include in a strategic plan, but what they did do was cause us to think about the things that we may want to include, or at least consider what goes into a strategic planning, how to lay it out, and how to implement it across campus.
Without the direct feedback that the campus community has been willing to provide, the strategic planning process probably would not have gotten as far as it has thus far. Campus community from top to the bottom has been willing to really give us some great ideas, things to think about, turned our attention to areas that perhaps we overlooked, illuminated some things that we suspected all along, and have really validated our process by being so engaged and so willing to give us honest, direct, and clear feedback.
Our next step is to finish formulating the process for how the strategic plan will be created. We've already identified some key people who will be involved in the writing of the strategic plan, but it's to start working on the draft, and hopefully we'll have a rough draft of the next strategic plan finished by the end of this summer, so that with the new provost comes on board, they'll be able to help in the process of finalizing and putting together the strategic plan to be implemented 1.5 years from now.
We are going about this so it doesn't sit on the shelf by having that broad input from the campus community, getting various points of view so that we really do have a living document. We I want it, and I know everybody else does too, to have it result in a document that we want to look at from time to time, rather than having to look at from time to time.
Budget alignment is the key that's going to turn the lock on opening up the strategic plan and implementing all of the things that we talked about in it. If we don't have the money, if we don't decide to dedicate the resources to moving forward, then of course this whole exercise has just been that, an exercise. By having it aligned directly with the budget and understand that we are going to dedicate resources to specific areas within the plan, will mean that the plan will actually get done, and that removes the excuse of saying, well, this was a great idea, but we don't have the money for it. Well, it's a great idea. We've decided that we're going to have the money for it, and we're going to dedicate the resources to it, so therefore let's do it.
It's really important in this forum that we get to hear from everybody that's present. We need to understand where they're coming from and to make sure that we're covering every possible aspect of the needs and the wants and the desires of everybody in this room so that we can make YSU a center of excellence.
I think there's really a need to have a dialogue about a new plan, because everything is changing so quickly in society, with technology, with changes in education. We really need a plan that can be nimble, and we need to have discussions about how we can embrace some of the changes, and also how we can deal with a really volatile environment in education.
The only thing that I would say to anybody who might be sitting in the audience wondering, why should I care about strategic planning at this stage of the game? At this stage of the game, the institution is us. Everybody who's an employee, every stakeholder, every student, communities, community engagement, you have a lot of different people who are impacted by the strategic plan. I think it's extremely important for us to understand that it is up to us to create the best YSU that we possibly can. We are YSU, and for that reason, I believe that we all need to get involved and do what we can in order to accomplish the goals of the strategic plan.
Okay. It's a good video, even though I'm not in it. I wasn't even asked, actually. It's okay. I don't feel snubbed. I'm sure I could be in the next video. So I'm happy to have been asked to talk about where we are, what we've done, and what we plan on doing moving forward in the context of the timeline. So SPOT, for those who aren't familiar, the Strategic Planning Organization team, it's composed of 18 members in total, mostly faculty, administration, staff, students, and 2 board members. And we're charged with not the actual writing and implementation of the plan. We're charged with laying the foundation for the successful writing and implementation of the plan, which really means the most important thing is getting as much involvement and engagement from you, meaning from the campus community, in this strategic planning process. Because whoever writes the strategic plan, even if it's the best possible strategic plan that's ever been written, if it doesn't involve the campus, it's not going to be successful. Because those who are actually doing it, living the plan, have to be involved in its actual enactment. And so what SPOT has done the past year and continues to do is try and come up with different ways to engage the campus, to get us thinking about, well, what we want to be moving forward, and how best to execute the plan in the future. And so I'd say the most impactful thing that we've done is bring these thought leaders to campus. That we've had 4 in total. In the fall, we had 2 thought leaders who are, it's always just leaders in higher education, to talk with us about the future of higher education and the changing landscape of higher education, and to consider policies that we can implement to be successful given this changing landscape in the future. And the first one we had was Scott Cowan in October, who came and spoke to us about his experience as president of Tulane when he was president when Katrina hit New Orleans, and obviously had a severe impact in terms of the ability for that institution to function. But he was able to successfully guide the institution after Katrina to transform it to be successful as it is today. And so, drawing from his experience, he discussed the importance of institutional identity and distinction, knowing who we are, where we came from, in determining who we want to be and where we want to move forward. Then we had Christine Ortiz in November, who is a professor at MIT and founder of a new university called Station One, which places equity and access at the center of everything that it does as an educational model. And she discussed the importance of not just diversity, but of inclusion and equity, and the role of transdisciplinary project-based learning in the future of higher education. In addition to the two thought leaders in the fall, we also asked all departments and programs and colleges to consider who they consider themselves to be and the current strengths that they have, points of pride, points of distinction, and community impact, and different types of interdisciplinary programs that they currently have. We've also had several questions on the website. We had 4 questions in the fall relating to the future of education, challenges, identifying current strengths in line with Scott Cowan. What can we do to become more successful and increase inclusion and equity in the future, consistent with Christine Ortiz? There's also a Board of Trustees resolution, which I'll talk more about in a few minutes. But then the fall was about engaging campus and considering where we currently are. The spring has been and continues to be about engaging campus and considering where we want to go and how we're going to get there. And so we've had 2 more thought leaders come to campus. Vincent Tinto from Syracuse, who's a theorist on student success. He discussed with us the importance of not just retention and graduation rates, but of persistence and student motivation, and asked us to consider policies that we could implement to improve persistence that endure and scale upwards. Most recently, we had John McGee from St. John's and St. Benedict, who discussed the impact of changing demographics, economics, and cultural values, and the importance of the value and the brand in addressing issues related to economics and demographics that we face. In addition, each program has been asked, and department and college has been asked, to not just think about what their current strengths are, but what they see their current strengths being in the future and where they hope to go in the future. And this is through a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So an opportunity analysis assessment, how they plan to contribute to strategic opportunities, interdisciplinary research and collaboration, and service to the communities. We've also had more questions on the strategic planning website related to how we can help guide YSU on its best paths in the future, improving student success related to Vincent Tinto, and the current question related to how we can increase our impact in the community. And so that's where we currently stand. Moving forward, this summer we actually plan to, using all of this input that we've gathered and analyzing this input, this feedback, to begin actually drafting the plan. And exactly who's charged with that, we don't know. But it involves some people on spot and other people. And also the new provost, I should say, will be brought on board in this process, to draft an outline around the major themes with the goal of having the first draft released to the campus community at the start of the fall semester, in particular in time for the President's State of the University address. Right? And then there'll be a time for campus feedback. It's not going to be that we have our draft and this is what we're doing. It's going to be that we have our draft and we want to hear what you think about this and how you think it could be improved. So we'll essentially have an opportunity to consider campus feedback and then revise and resubmit that draft plan to the campus throughout the fall semester. And then I'd say comes, there'll also be an opportunity to consider the mission and vision and a potential revision to the mission and vision statement. And then the most important part is the actual doing of the plan, right? Because it's not as if it's just that, boom, we finished this great strategic plan and now we're done. What matters is we have this plan in place that has developed the strategic priorities that we want to see moving forward. But what matters is the actual implementation of that and execution of that. And so by next spring, the goal is to align resources with these strategic plan priorities to ensure that our budget is consistent with and reflects the priorities identified within the plan. The Board of Trustees has also been involved in this process from the very beginning. And so we have two members that have been on spot, two Board of Trustees members that have been on spot. And it's also been a major part, or was a major part, of the board advance in October. They've adopted two resolutions related to the strategic plan. The first one affirming the development of the plan with an acknowledgement that they will devote resources towards the enactment of the priorities that are developed within that plan. And then the second resolution in March, affirming the foundation for success is our educational quality, strategic research, enrolling new students from new markets, including international and online, collaborations with the community, technology, and affirming that all decisions must be data-driven and data-informed in order to be structurally and functionally effective. And after the first draft is completed, it will be a major part of the board advance in October 2019, this October, along with the proposed feedback that we've received from the campus. So with that, I'll hand the floor over to President Tressel, who's going to speak about some of the themes that have begun to
Thank
emerge.
you, sir. We'll
All
get
right,
you in the
thank
next video.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks so much to, I need that, yeah. Thanks so much, AJ, and really all of the people who have been involved. This is a critical exercise, which we hope turns into an extraordinary plan. A lot of busy people have been spending a lot of time giving a lot of input, and he talked about those questions and so forth on the website. And I think, did we want to refer to those boards are kind of the, what do we call that, a word
bubble.
Word bubble, that the most mentioned things happen to be on those posters right there, and there's been a lot of good input, a lot of great attendance to the thought leaders, a lot of discussion to follow, a lot of good thinking, and as we move forward in the timeline and meet the direction of our Board of Trustees, couldn't be more proud of all of you for taking part and being here today. And I was thinking coming over that some of the campus might be open forum weary, especially as busy as everyone is here at this point in the semester. And so we can't thank you enough for being a part of this, and we'll try to move as quickly as we can and get you back at what is most pressing. As we've had these discussions about, what is it that we're called to do, who are we, what is it that we would like to be, and so forth, the three things on the card that you have really been the ones that continue to surface. And as you look at the three areas, the student futures. You know, so often we talk about student success, but sometimes it's in relation to student success means retention, means revenue, and those kinds of things. But really, our goal needs to be, what are the futures for our students? I'm sure the people who are funding their time here, whether it be parents or the federal government or the state government, whoever it is that's funding their time here, really is most interested in the futures of our students and the fact that the learning, the ability to learn, to think, to problem solve, and all the rest needs to be a lifelong habit that is developed and honed in their time here. And then, of course, the academic distinction, discovery of knowledge and or research. And as you listen to what our impact is in this region, and we've talked a lot about the economic impact study that was done by the state, the social impact study that was done by the state, Youngstown State University is critically important for this region and beyond. And that our goal needs to be, who we need to be, is to be a part of a collective group that will impact, making sure that we're interacting with all of the various folks that are a part of it. And so these three areas, general big areas, have really been the ones that have surfaced and will create the framework as we move forward and get a little bit more definitive in these various areas. So if you go to that first one, and here's where your card will come in, before the afternoon is over here, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that are ongoing in these areas, and we need you to maybe add some other thoughts in these particular big areas that we need to be researching, considering, thinking about, integrating into the plan, and so forth. But there's been some things that have been ongoing. We haven't been in a pause mode necessarily while we've been doing this strategic planning, because life goes on. We've got a lot of great students here. We've got a lot of things that we're trying to accomplish, but we have moved forward on some things. So, for instance, we have made the decision, as we've thought about some of the input we've gotten and some of the, whether it be from thought leaders or from NESE evaluation studies or from open forums or whatever it happens to be, that really it's critical. The mission that we have at this institution is to do a great job of teaching and make sure that there's a result of a great deal of learning. And one of the things that I remember doing town halls a couple years ago, and we talked about what were the important things in the minds of people. One of the things that came up a lot was training. You know, how can we get better at what we're doing? And so as we've posted, some of you may have noticed, we've posted positions for an assistant provost for teaching and learning. Carrie, I saw walk in here somewhere, Carrie Wecht, she's been trying to juggle her faculty load and having some things for our faculty, for faculty development and so forth. We've come to the conclusion that something this important has got to be someone or some group's assignment every single day. And Charlie Howell put together a group and studied some teaching and learning institutes. I think they drove over to Case and they did a lot of research in various groups. And we've come up with a plan to bring on board, effective this fall, an assistant provost for teaching and learning so we can really get better at what it is our primary mission is here. The same is true, the assistant provost for diversity and inclusion. We've had a lot of good thought leaders, a lot of good discussion, a lot of good input, quite honestly, from our students, that perhaps this isn't an area where we're as good as we could be. If you look at the NESE evaluations, you'll see in most of the academic areas, the career preparedness areas, I feel like I'm ready to go out and get a job, be a good citizen, etc. Our evaluation is pretty good. Our evaluation is not quite as good in areas like I had opportunities to spend time with people that I haven't spent time with, learn about other cultures, have interaction, have discussions, be a part of events, etc. We haven't had quite as good an evaluation. As we've talked a lot about it, it's kind of like we want to be great at teaching and learning. Well, let's let's invest in it, let's train in it, let's get better at it. The same is true in diversity and inclusion. We need someone, some group, working each and every day in that particular area, which will have a broad base. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of different things that we could do to enhance the experience that all of us have so that we do a better job as we lead our students in those areas, and better experiences for our students. And so that's something that we're moving forward. We're working hard to try to sort out really what is the best direction, what is it that we want to become, what is it that we have the opportunity to become in the research area. What is it that we can do with this Mahoning Valley Innovation Commercialization Center? The state of Ohio saw fit to give us $7 million for a building. The federal government gave us another $4 million. Our faculty have gone out and leveraged that, and we've got over $10 million worth of additive manufacturing equipment and so forth. And as the beginning of an innovation center, we had some groups go over to the Oak Ridge National Labs Thursday and Friday in Knoxville. We were just at America Makes with the people from the United States Marine Corps, United States Air Force Academy, or not Academy, but the research area, to talk about how can we perhaps be a world leader in innovation, which will begin from the additive manufacturing and STEM focal point, but then intersperse interdisciplinary all the way through. How do you teach for the jobs of the future? College of Ed, we need you. We need the art folks, because nowadays you're not held to what your machine can build. You're held to what your mind can create, and we can print it and so forth. Obviously, the business, commercialization, the analytics, the behavioral analysis, all can be a part, we believe, of an extraordinary innovation center, so we're working extremely hard on that. We've been working on the online initiatives. People have been working extremely hard. Where's that going? Who knows? Where should it go? I'm not sure we even know that, but we know that we need to be competitive, and we need to at least dip our toe in the waters, and people have been working on that, and will continue to do so. I was just talking with, I think it was Chris, was talking about, Chris Blair's here somewhere. There she is, talking about what, 52% was the number you said of courses that you had available online because the students want them, you know, of the gen ed and so forth. So we've got to figure out what's our direction in that. The Teaching and Learning Institute will have a big part of that. That's a part of that job description to help us move forward. And then the stackable certificates, the micro degrees, the credentialing. Every meeting we go to at the state, the talk is constantly from our legislators, our business partners, is yes, we need that initial education of K through 12. We need that higher ed or community college and beyond. But what we really also need to get into is the fact that the world is changing so quickly. Can you provide those lifelong learning opportunities, those credentialing of things that weren't there when they were in school, but that's what the company needs them to do? That will be an important part of the funding of the state, I'm sure, going in the future. And so there's no question. Those are just some of the things we've been working on extremely hard. What we would ask you to do before you leave today is, if there's some other things that pop up in your mind that we need to continue to think about, that are going to be important, that will be crucial to the future, jot it down on that area and give us a little bit of information to work on as we go. So the next one is that student futures and lifelong learning, and I'm not going to talk through a million of these things, but a lot of you have been a part of these discussions, these committees, these research projects and so forth. But first-year experience, we're working extremely hard. So much of the data, so much of what Dr. Tinto talked to us about when he was here, is that first year really is going to determine how passionate that student is about finishing a college degree. It might not end up in this area that they thought it was going to be. but it is going to be the indicator of just how passionate they are of completing and going on and carrying that four-year degree into their future. The general education, I know you've been doing a lot of discussion on that, and that's so critical. What we hear a lot from the state level, quite honestly, is what they're looking for is making sure that general education is increasingly more portable. That as students change their mind, and students change minds, I don't know what the percent is that change majors, but I'm sure it's significant. Those gen eds need to be as portable as possible. The stories when we talk to students about they changed their major and then they had to go back and do so many more things, and all of a sudden it's 5 or 5.5 years to graduation. Those kinds of stories we've got to try to eliminate. Advising. Students all have different needs. They talked a lot in some of the thought leader things about the fact that we don't want our advising to be transactional. We want our advising to take a bigger role than that and not just sign up for the classes. Well, we've got to figure out we're understaffed. Our advisors their caseload is extraordinary. What can we do to get better at that as we prepare? The persistence initiative. We talk often about what are our opportunities. The opportunities really, our high-end students, they're doing fine in the 90-some% ratio of graduating and so forth, and our ones that come in with provisional or whatever, it's tough. But man, that big group in the middle, we can do better with that group. There's a tremendous opportunity, and we've got to work hard on that persistence initiative. Degree audit system, we hear a lot about that, especially with students who change majors and so forth. Streamlining that and doing a better job with that. I know that there's a group that's working extremely hard with that. Experiential learning, everything we read in the research, everything we listen to as we talk to people out there who are hiring our students, is it sure nice to have someone who has experienced what they're going to do. So critical. How can we get even better and better at that? Mental health situation. Clearly on college campuses, the spike, the data, it's amazing what we're facing right now. We were proud of our students that they voted to have Mercy Health create right across the street here the opportunity for there to be psychiatric services right across the street. And I think someone told me the first day it was open, we had 28 kids that went in for that service. This is real. The data doesn't lie. This is something that we've got to make sure we continue to work at and get better at every day. Career success. See Justin up there, figuring out what is it that we can do to help people search and find that thing that they'll be passionate about. And then once they find that, how can we help them move along and be successful in that? And that's critical. And then, of course, that stackable certificates and micro degrees, the things that our people are going to need to be competitive are important. So same thing on that card. If there's anything that, this isn't complete, but these are just some of the things we've been working on. What are some of the other things that we've got to make sure that we keep in mind as we move forward? And then the collective impact. There's no question. People ask all the time. It's what happens when you get a little older. In fact, Pintar took a shot at me today. I told a little story about my freshman English class. And she said, man, that's amazing. That really had an impact on you. And it's not like that was just yesterday. Man. But one of the things that when you get old, they ask you, why are you doing what you're doing? They say, you're getting awful old. Why the heck are you doing this? And I said, you know what? The biggest reason, it is so critical for this region. There is nothing more important for this region than Youngstown State University. Nothing. I would debate that with anyone. And our mission must include the fact that we are going to continue to have and even increase the impact that we have on this region. And we're going to need to do it collectively. We're going to need to do it side by side, and sometimes that's hard. I had some of my economic development guys sit through 5 two-hour meetings with groups who were all talking about doing the same thing, and it was a little bit painful. I hope none of the people are here, but it was a little bit painful. But you know what? We've got to be in the room with all the partners. We've got to make sure that we're there for them, that we stay strict to mission, but that we're collectively working together. And so in what areas can we have this impact in this region? Number one, obviously, is education. People turn to us, for their higher education for sure. Number two is in that innovative space, in that economic development space. When you talk to young people around here like we do when we go to the high schools and so forth, they would really like to be here in their futures in this region. Many of them would like to be here. There are some who say, hey, I'm out of here, I'm going to the sun, or whatever, fine. Many of them would like to be here. We've got to provide the opportunities. We've got to help that economic development standpoint to give them those opportunities so that they can have that prosperity that they seek, that we want for them, for our region to have. Healthcare, personnel with healthcare development. We clearly are the leader in healthcare. So many of our different departments and folks, we are the healthcare industry providing the great services for this region. We're the workforce development group. We're the ones that are going to create. We have talked to so many people. We're so close to maybe having some really impactful things consider being in this region. And number one question is workforce. Will you be able to provide us the workforce? We need to be able to say, yes, we will. And we'll be versatile, we'll be agile, we'll learn what it is, the needs that you have, and we'll prepare our students for those opportunities because they do want to be in this region. Social services, we're clearly the leader. You look at any social service agency, we are the ones. In fact, Joe and I were talking today. They count on us for their succession planning. As their folks are moving out and retiring or going elsewhere, they count on us to make sure that their roles are full. There is no question we have amazing impact in that area. Law enforcement certification, law enforcement, all the different things in that area. They count on us to make sure that we provide it. Obviously, the arts and culture. Phyllis and I talk all the time. How many places of a region this size, a university this size, have the abundance of the arts and culture that we do? There's a lot of good new universities around. There's universities that don't even have a physical setup. They're online. We have an amazing. Who has a Mill Creek Park? Who has a Butler? Who has a McDonough? Who has a Labor and Industry Museum? Who has a Stambaugh? Who has a Dior? Now who has an amphitheater? A place this size having that kind of thing, our responsibility is to provide the talent in those arts and culture. And that's an impact. And then I think there's no question that we provide the community's spirit, whether it be in the activity of the arts and so forth, or just the pride they have in what they see our students accomplish, or the pride they have in what they see our faculty accomplish, or our ethics bowl team, or our moot court team, or our concrete canoe, or our women's basketball, or whatever. We provide this community's spirit. And that's part of our responsibility, and it has to be part of who we are. So, same thing on that third card. If you can think of some things that we've got to make sure that we need to consider, please jot those down. And again, none of these lists are complete. These are just some of the highlights of the things that I know a lot of you are working on. So, last slide here. So, strategic planning must be lined with realities. We can, as I read our strategic plan 2010, quite honestly, my takeaway, having not been here at the time, was that was a strategic wish list as opposed to really a strategic plan. It were things that we were hoping might happen, but not necessarily had those data-driven discussions, had some of the realities in mind, some of the things that we have to face. So we must keep in mind whenever we're making this plan that there's certain goals that have to always be there. And so the first one is we have a workforce that works extremely hard, and we've always got to keep in mind that we want fair compensation, which is not free. We have to keep that in mind as we're thinking about, well, we want to do this and this and this and this. We can never lose sight of the people that are here serving all those students, serving this community, making this impact. We have to be able to compensate them. Two is we've got to always keep in mind that we need adequate personnel to do whatever this plan is. We need the support. We need the expertise. We need the personnel to carry out the plan, which, too, is not free. And then thirdly is we need the infrastructure in place. The world is changing. Technology is changing. It's more costly. Facilities are different. Whatever it happens to be, we need that infrastructure in place, both on the campus and around, and the things that our students are looking for outside of the classroom, whether it be housing or places to eat or places to have activity or whatever. We've got to make sure that we have that infrastructure in place. So all of that is costly. So are all of our ideas and all of our thoughts in our strategic plan. So what are our opportunities? Well, the first opportunity is enrollment. That is what drives us financially. It's a challenge. There's no question. Our demographics, we know where they're going. The good news is we have more places for people to live that come from outside of those demographics. So we have opportunity there. We have opportunity in some of the areas that our people are working on, like online opportunities. Nate's working on international and so forth. Enrollment is our opportunity. Enrollment, though, keep in mind, is the combination of students we attract and students we retain and students that persist. And then the only thing I don't like about graduation is they stop paying us, but it's the goal. But enrollment isn't just attracting students, it's doing a great job with them and making sure that they want to continue to get a higher education degree and they want to do it here. So enrollment is a great opportunity. State funding, kind of an opportunity out of our control. But they're being pretty transparent about the fact that probably eventually, outside of just your number count, and we now learned 9 years ago your graduation rate, outside of those two indicators, somewhere in there they're going to weave in how well you've done keeping students in Ohio. You can just see that coming. Your ability to track your placement of students utilizing their degree, maybe not necessarily in the degree area, but utilizing their degree in the state. Because, it's difficult to say, well, I'm an English major. I might be like the CEO of First Energy was. He was an English major. And you say, well, gosh, he's not in his field. Yeah, well, he's using his degree just fine. But what the state's interested in is Ohio when it comes to funding, which I understand. Next up, opportunity is the utilization of our assets. We have certain assets. I think one of them is our location. We're midway between Pittsburgh and Cleveland, midway between New York and Chicago. We have 6.83 million people within an hour's drive. That's an asset. Yes, the demographics are down a little bit, but let's go compete and do it a little bit better than maybe we traditionally have in some areas and so forth. We have assets like our faculty. We have assets like our staff. We have assets like our buildings. We have assets like our expertise that perhaps. We have assets, huge asset, YSU Foundation. YSU Foundation has been extraordinary. Without them the last 4 or 5 years and their willingness to take on our development activities, go out and work hard on a campaign. I just heard from Paul today, we're at $89.4 million in our $100 million campaign. That's an asset. So we have a lot of assets. Siemens Corporation gave us a, $400 million software asset. That's an asset. What assets are we going to be able to utilize so that we can reach a lot of those goals? Institutional effectiveness, AJ mentioned, data-driven decisions, and we've talked a lot about we need to get verifiable, clean, usable, good data so that we can make decisions. And we've been working hard to try to work on getting that in order, and Becky's done a great job of just keeping us alive with our federal and state mandates. And now we're going to take that group to the next level and help us be effective. We've talked a lot with our deans and department chairs about section efficiency. The more efficient we can be and utilize our personnel most efficiently, that's going to help us reach those goals over on the other side. We're working hard on that. And then space utilization. How can we use be most effective in the utilization of our space and maybe even driving a little bit of revenue from our space? If you thought of us as a hotel, and if the hotel's closed from May 15th until August 15th, it would be hard time paying the bills. Well, we need our hotel a little fuller in some times when the core mission doesn't need it. And so space utilization and that type of asset utilization. So those are just some of the realities I mentioned to the deans and the department chairs earlier today. Hey, this is going to be an interesting year. I don't know the impact of Lordstown. We think we lost a couple dozen, 3 dozen maybe students even at the midterm because families were transferred and so forth. I don't know the impact it's going to have on the other businesses. Cleveland State just finished a study, economic impact study, on Northeast Ohio and the Lordstown closing, and they have assessed it, and I don't know how those economists do things, but at $8 billion. $8 billion. So you'd think that is going to touch us somewhere. So we're going to have some challenges, which in my mind makes this strategic planning even more important because we need to really figure it out, execute it, give ourselves a chance because it's going to be challenging times, but there's no question in my mind we have the personnel to do it, we have the place to do it. Now we've got to make really good decisions as we go, and I'm sure that our group will continue to work hard on that. So with that, questions. We said we were going to be done before 4. We promised you all questions of any kind, and if I can't answer them, we've got the strategic planning committee up here, and we've even got one of our board of trustees, Dr. Rocco here, that Rocco's exhausted. He's in nursing and he's in clinicals, and he's walking in like he's exhausted here. We got to get you in better shape. Questions. Got to have questions. Come on. We weren't that thorough. AJ, you were thorough. Come on. Did we have a plant question anywhere? Did you guys, don't you do that in one of these forums? Okay.
So it's hard not to look at those word clouds, and my eyes are really bad, so from back here, I do see one word that pops off of a bunch of them, and it says faculty. And, when you think about the positions that you mentioned, and I know this question has come up in other meetings, but how do you justify hiring new associate provosts and not hiring faculty? I'm okay.
That's a good question.
I'm okay with whatever the answer is if it also then is tied into the
You know, I think that's a little bit of it, but not the big part of it. Yeah. I think we can't make the mistake that many universities have made, and we've probably made ourselves, is all of a sudden you have some money and you hire, and then all of a sudden 10 years from now the world changed, and those are 30-year decisions many times. You know, the assistant provost won't be 30-year decisions. They don't have to be. So I think a small part of your question is, yes, we do need to get a little further along to figure out where do we really want to allocate and focus. And you can't do that until you've done the data study and all the rest. That's a part of it. But I think a bigger part of it is this. We have, I think, about 412 faculty full-time, and 500-600, part-time. Back in 2010, when we had 15,000 students, we had like 415. Okay, our faculty-student ratio is much lower, than it was, at that time. But to me, that's not even the case. It's not like, well, we don't need any more, because I don't believe that. We do need it in some areas. But to me, the biggest thing is this. That 412 and those 500-plus part-timers, in my mind, there'll be more impact on this institution if they get better with the Teaching and Learning Institute, and if they get better in the diversity and inclusion phase of things, and if we as an overall campus get better at those, then 2 or 3 faculty would make. To me, the collective impact would be much larger. I think that's what happens a lot, is people go out and spend a lot of money on individual things and then don't spend the money on the things that can have most impact. And I happen to think, as I've listened for about 4.5 years, about where is it that we could, there's really a place to get better, and how many of our faculty have had much training in either of those areas, teaching or diversity and inclusion. And the world's changed a lot in those areas. So even if they did 20 years ago or 15 years ago, the world has changed a lot in those areas. So I think it's a great question. In fact, that's almost like a plant, because I'm not sure there's anything more important than getting better at teaching. Nothing will have more impact, which will in turn help us get better at learning. And we have got to get our students ready for a world that doesn't look like the world they grew up in. Because in 2035, whether we're alive or not as an institution, the world is not going to look like this room. And I think we owe it to our students who are going to be alive in 2035 to prepare them for that, and they have said we haven't. So in my mind, it's a no-brainer. If I had all the money in the world, I would do both. But unfortunately, I mentioned to the department chairs and deans today, my board doesn't want to be in the weeds, but they want to be in the black. So I get that message loud and clear from them. So thank you for the softball question. Yeah, Nancy?
That we're going to have to really look at what might be the balance there.
Yeah, you never know. But I guess my immediate response would be, I hope we're not looking at online learning and distance ed with the idea that we want to take less Ohio students. I think this is an addition to every Ohio student. And what's tough for us, honestly, where we're different than Ohio State or someone that's more in the center of the state, is that Pennsylvania is a big deal for us. But quite honestly, our legislators don't care about Pennsylvania. We do. They're part of our world. They're part of that collective impact. And so there'll be a lot of discussions ahead. I think people like us in Toledo, in University of Cincinnati, and Ohio U, who were sitting on the borders, and we'll be saying, oh, wait a minute now. let's tweak that formula a little bit, because we're here to serve and not, be segregated in who we serve. But I hope we don't turn away any Ohio. And, it's just like when they went to the state subsidy for the completion. Neil will tell you. Is Neil here? Yeah. Neil will tell you. The number of meetings and the risk factors and the coefficients that if you have this, you get credit for that, and so forth, it will be 10 times more complicated when you start talking about placement. But remember, their vantage point, they feel as if they're elected so that companies come to Ohio. Companies say to them, if I'm coming to Ohio, you better get me a workforce. And they're saying, I promise you, we are going to push our public universities to make sure you have a workforce. So how fast will it get there? I don't know. But really, not just Ohio, but we really should want to know how well we're doing with placing students. If the last time we think about how our students are doing is when we count them in the graduation rate, that's probably as nearly as wrong as when all we worried about was how many students came to school here, which was probably morally not as you think back. It was the rules of engagement, but it probably wasn't the morally right thing to do. It was just simply count bodies. So I don't think online should affect that at all. To me, online is a little bit about international. I don't know where Nathan went. Is Nathan here? He's probably in Taiwan or somewhere. No. Okay. Most of the kids go back to their countries, right? But they're still a great addition to our campus. They give us a global understanding that our students are going to need to have that global understanding, because that's the world. And online can give us a little opportunity and boost. But the state legislators consider us a public school in Ohio to serve Ohio. And so somewhere in there's going to be an impact. Don't know how. Yes, sir.
Going back to those word bubbles, the word students is also most prominent on each of those. How do we incorporate the students' voice as we develop our strategy?
In your spot team, didn't you have a couple students? Yeah. Getting as much input as we can. I think a lot of our people on the spot committee and in all of our discussions usually bring with them the thoughts that they've learned from the students. I know my presidential mentors, anything I've ever come up with, they came up with. I don't have any ideas. They're the ones that said, hey, why don't you fix Wick Avenue? I said, that's a good idea. Then they said, why don't you build some apartments? We'd like nicer places to live. I said, that's a good idea. I'll take credit for it, but thanks, it's a good idea. Why don't we get more places to eat? That's a good idea. So I think our people bring the students' vantage point, and we do have in the meetings. And Rocco and Lexi, in our board meetings, if anyone's been to our board meetings, they're open to everyone. No discussion ends without the board saying, Rocco, Lexi, how do you feel about that direction? Which has been so valuable, not just these two, but all the past student trustees. So I think we try. Nessie, Hillary's around here somewhere, but, we get good Nessie information that they're the ones that told us we needed to do better at diversity and inclusion. I'm not sure we came up with that idea, because it's been the same grade for the last, how many Nessies have there been? 500 Nessies. We've had the same low grade. And so they're sending us a message. Someone else said, it's 4 o'clock. We promised. AJ, you're supposed to wrap it up. Yeah. They didn't tell you? Something, a little soft shoe, or you got to do something to end it. Get them, have them storming out of here and say,
All right.
There you go.
Are we done? As far as the Q&A?
Oh, yeah, we're done. Yep.
Okay. Well, I'll say thank you for coming. if you could please make sure that you filled out your cards and that you hand your cards to Shannon, or just directly in the basket that is down here or up there. This is not